This is a true story that happened to me when I was 15 years old in Nottingham, England. I'm 20 now, but I still think about it often. Back in 2020, my parents had gone away for the weekend and I had the house to myself. Like most teenagers, I wasn't about to spend it alone, so I invited my best friend Kyle over for a sleepover. I'll call him Kyle for privacy reasons. Now, we had done this countless times before, but neither one of us knew that night would stick with us forever. The day started off completely normal. It was a crisp Friday afternoon, one of those gray Nottingham days where it was cold but not raining. Kyle showed up around 2 p.m. and we decided to head into town to stock up on snacks for the night. We were planning on staying up late, eating junk food and playing video games until we passed out. You know, just a typical teenage night. We walked to the shops. I remember it clearly. We grabbed the fried chicken, a large pepperoni pizza, and a couple of big bottles of Coca-Cola. We even joked about getting energy drinks, but figured Coke was enough to keep us wired. After checking out, we'd started heading to the bus stop to go back to my place. That's when we first noticed him. There was a man standing across the street, just kind of loitering near a lamppost. He wasn't doing anything obvious or threatening, just standing there. But something about him caught my eye. He looked like he was in his early 40s with a scruffy, uneven beard. He wore a black hoodie, dark jeans, and scuffed trainers. His hands were in his pockets, and even though he had his hood up, I could tell he was watching us. At first, I brushed it off. Nottingham has its fair share of odd people, and maybe he was just waiting for someone or just killing time. I didn't even mention it to Kyle. But as we walked to the bus stop, I happened to glance back, and there he was again, a little closer now, still watching us. I remember saying something casual like, "Hey, don't look now, but that guy's been behind us for a bit." Kyle turned suddenly and spotted him too. His expression immediately changed from relaxed to serious. We both agreed that it was probably nothing, but just to be safe, we decided to take the next bus, even if it wasn't the exact route we had planned. When the bus came, we got on quickly. I sat by the window and anxiously scanned the street. The man didn't follow us onto the bus, which was a relief. We figured maybe we were just being paranoid kids. By the time we got home, the sun had just started to set, and we were back in that sleepover mood. We pushed what happened out of our minds, threw the pizza in the oven, and then fired up Mortal Kombat. Hours went by. We laughed, talked trash over matches, and devoured all the snacks we bought. Around 10 p.m., right when Kyle was about to finish me off in a match, we heard it. A distinct clunk outside, like the sound of a gate swinging shut or something metallic shifting. I paused the game and then said, "Dude, did you hear that?" Kyle nodded slowly. We both just sat there listening. After a moment of silence, I got up and checked the kitchen window, which had a clear view of the back garden. I didn't see anyone, but the wooden fence gate was wide open. I always closed the gate. Always. Telling myself it was probably just the wind or maybe a stray animal, I slipped on my trainers and stepped out into the backyard. The night air was freezing and still. I didn't see anyone around, but I locked the gate just in case and came back inside. We went back to our game, although we were a bit more on edge now. Around midnight, we finally got tired and headed up to my room to wind down. We weren't ready to sleep just yet, but we lay on our phones and talked about random stuff, school, girls, whatever 15-year-olds usually talk about. I remember I was halfway through scrolling on Instagram when I noticed something. A flash of white light, almost like a camera flash, and it blinked across the window. I froze. My window overlooked the side of the house right where the backyard fence ran along. My heart instantly dropped into my stomach. I got up, slowly peeled back the curtain, and there he was, the same man from earlier, standing dead still right next to my house, staring directly at my window. I still remember everything about him in that moment. The stubble on his chin, the way that his hoodie cast shadows over his face, and worst of all, the expression. His mouth wasn't smiling, but his eyes looked like he was enjoying this. I whispered sharply to Kyle, "Dude, it's him. He's outside." Kyle shot up, came up to the window, and his face turned pale. Without hesitation, I grabbed my phone and dialed 999. As I explained what was happening to the dispatcher, we just kept glancing back at the window. Midway through the call, we saw the man turn and sprint away, disappearing right behind our neighbor's fence. The police showed up about 15 minutes later. They were calm, but they did take it seriously. The two officers did a search around the property and the surrounding streets, but they didn't find anyone. The man was gone. They advised us to keep the doors locked and call again if we saw anything. When my parents got home a few days later, I told them everything. They were alarmed enough that we decided to move within the month. As of now, we relocated to a different part of Nottingham. It's been years now, and I've never seen that man again. I still don't know how he managed to follow us home, but sometimes, especially at night, I still find myself checking my backyard just in case. My name is Jennifer. The story is from 2022 when I was working at GameStop. For context, I was a 21-year-old woman at that point. My hair was dyed bright blue, and I was short and fairly busty. I got hit on quite a few times, which I kind of expected working at GameStop. But this was different. It was a summer night, and I was closing the store by myself. I had been organizing the go-backs when the door opened. "Hey, welcome to GameStop," I said. In front of me was the tallest, greasiest man I've ever seen. Let's call him Greg. He came up to my counter and put his arm up, like he knew me or something. It was all alarmingly casual. "How can I help you?" I asked him. "Oh, just looking to trade this in," he replied, setting down a bag. He opened it to reveal a PlayStation 4. We had started chatting a bit, as is typical when I'm wiping down a console and want to make sure the customer hasn't changed their mind. As I'm asking him if he's brought an HDMI to go with the system, he then goes, "Hey, I know this is random, but can I have your number?" I have to stop what I'm doing and look at him. I'm the only other person in the store and I'm not really sure what to do. But I tell him that I'm not comfortable with that. Greg keeps pushing. "Okay, well, how about your Discord then, cutie? You've got to have one of those, yeah? Come on, I want to set up a time to meet up." The way he said meet up has always stuck with me. The way he was eyeing me, it made me feel like a piece of meat. I inform him that I have a boyfriend and that I'm not going to give him my Discord. But Greg persists. It being close to the end of the night, I just want to get him out of here so I can return home and go to sleep. Stupidly though, I gave him my Discord. I know that I shouldn't have, but at the time I was stupid and I felt threatened as the only person in the store. Now, we have a policy where if you're trading in a system, we need an ID just to make sure it isn't stolen or something. I was entering the information on his ID for the trade when he asked me if I really did have a boyfriend. I did and still do. I informed him that yes, I did, and that we'd been dating for almost 2 years at that point. "Oh, I see. Is it serious? Where did you guys meet?" he asked. I was starting to become more uncomfortable as time went on. What did he mean by asking if my 2-year relationship was serious? "Yeah, it's pretty serious," I told him, looking at his ID. "We met in a college class online." I'm still not sure why I told him that. I guess it was just to make my very real boyfriend seem more real to him. "So that's where I meet blue-haired cuties like you." Greg chuckled. It was then that I noticed his date of birth. He was 37, talking about going to hit on college girls at a class. I, being more than creeped out, handed him back his ID. I'd like to think that now I'd have told him off, but at the same time I was very non-confrontational. It took what felt like forever, but I got him his cash and sent him on his way to lock up the store. I sighed and started to clean up, turning on some music to calm myself down. I wasn't looking at my phone very much, since there was a lot of cleaning to do. But when I checked, I had 25 messages from him. "Hey cutie, you want to get some drinks when you're off? It's me, Greg. I'll be waiting in the lot. smiley face emoji. I panicked, all color draining from my face as I looked out the window to see, well, Greg. He was sitting by his car. He had been waiting for an hour to see me after work. I don't doubt that he was watching me too. Freaked out, I ducked back into the back room to call my boyfriend. I figured if I was on the phone with him, not only would it verify that he was real, but that Greg wouldn't bother me. I put him on speaker and then locked up the place, making sure to call him babe and baby, crap like that. But I guess Greg had gotten tired of waiting because his car wasn't in the lot when I locked up. I was a bit shaken the whole drive home, but when I got home, he had texted me again. Hey, where did you go, cutie? I got us some McDonald's. What the hell? I called my boyfriend back, totally freaking out. I was practically sobbing. My boyfriend has always been so much better about standing up for himself and me. Thank God for that. He asked for Greg's information and told him to screw off. I was about to block Greg when I got another message. You bitch, stop lying to me. I don't even know why, but I responded. I'm not lying about anything. I'm going to block you now. Screw off. I received one last message from him. You're such an ugly woman. You're lucky a guy like me is even interested in you. Screw you. I hope someone assaults you. I decided then to just block him, something that I should have done the second he left the store. I had off the next day, luckily, but when I came in the next day, I was informed that a guest had a complaint about me. Apparently, Greg had told me to come in on my day off and complain to the manager that I had done the trade wrong somehow and had been very rude. I then informed my manager of what had all happened, and she understood. She knew me very well, and she knew that I was a very chill person and very calm with customers, so she checked the trade herself just to make sure it was all right, and sure enough, it was. I'm extremely lucky that I didn't see Greg again after this. Whenever I worked the night shift, I was always so scared of seeing him. So yeah, Greg, screw you. Don't go creeping on GameStop cashiers, or anyone for that matter, and screw off. I'm so much more ready to mess you up if you try anything else, and I don't need my boyfriend to do it for me. I only got to experience this horror story through a phone call with a friend of mine. She gave me permission to share it as she can't do all that, and she had told me over the phone that night. She was quite spooked, but what happened was that she made great efforts to forget about it. This happened in our hometown, which I will not disclose for privacy reasons. We have this little shopping center near where my house was. It isn't really big enough to be a mall, and it really only had maybe like 6 stores and an AMC theater around that area. My friend, whom I will address as V, called me around 8 p.m. because she had something coming up, so she couldn't come over after shopping at a clothing store in that little shopping center. Now, to give a layout to the outside of this building, the front of the building had a medium-sized parking lot. She parked in a spot closest to the building so she didn't have to walk far in the dark. Now, she had her driver's permit, and I didn't at the time, which is why I wasn't there with her at the store. I heard her open the shop's front door, and she had kind of stopped in between her sentences very suddenly. I asked her, concerned, "You okay? Why did you get silent on me?" She speaks softly into the phone. "There's a creepy van that's parked close to my car," I replied. "Okay, it might not be anything serious. Maybe you're just being paranoid." V was one person I knew that overturned things more than I even did. She then said, "No, there's something off about the van. The driver's side door and back doors are open, but there's no sign of anyone in the car. It's angled just enough for me to see inside. I'll see if I can look inside from here." I said okay and to just keep me on the phone and be careful. Suddenly, after hearing her make a few steps and an intense 5 minutes of silence, I heard her gasp. I exclaim, "What? What is it?" She then says softly on the phone, "I think I see what looks like a woman's silhouette in the back slumped over, but she isn't moving." Now worried about her safety, I told her to get back into the store and inform a clerk and call 911 just to be safe. She does so, putting me on hold temporarily while she goes inside and calls 911. Now, this is where I wasn't on the phone with her. She explained to me this part of the story with me afterwards. After she got inside, both a clerk and her tried to get a hold of the cops. She looked out the clear glass doors in front of the building to only see one man suddenly in the car on the passenger side, which she didn't see before. Another man suddenly bolts from behind the car where she couldn't see and closes the back doors, then hops into the driver's seat and starts the car. Meanwhile, the cops were just minutes away, and she could hear the sirens in the distance. Well, the suspicious van zooms out of there fast, and the cops arrive, and suddenly both V and another person who were watching told the cops that they just drove off, then pointing them in the direction in which they headed. One cop car stayed behind to get more information, while the other sped off to try and catch the van, calling for backup. Luckily, after putting me on hold, V thought it was wise to take a picture of the license plate from afar just in case. She gave the officers with her the information, and they gave that information to the cops chasing after the van, as well as an exact description of the color and potential year and brand of the car. The officers left and V headed home right after, as she wasn't about to stay there a moment longer. She then called me and explained everything that happened. She said that the officer she spoke to was kind enough to update her about the incident when she called about it. From the sounds of it, they never caught the van that night, but they traced the license plate to a residence. There they made an arrest of the owner of the house. He didn't disclose too much else to V. Even now though, me and V wonder what the woman was doing in that car. Was there foul play? Did she live? We never really found out for sure. I also get weirded out about the why of the people leaving the car doors open. Clearly they were hiding, maybe even trying to kidnap another person. Maybe by using the woman in the car to lure another person to come and check in on her. What if V and I weren't on the phone call? Would things have gone down differently? I'm honestly just glad she's safe and that her and no one else were harmed. Now, if we know that either one of us are going to be out late at night, we always text each other our locations, or we call to keep tabs just in case. It's a really scary world out there, and stuff like this can sadly happen even in your hometown where you thought you would feel safe. Please be safe out there, everyone, and be aware of your surroundings. If something or someone seems really out of place or character, do not be scared to maybe bring attention to it. This started in the summer of 2024. My friend was visiting her mother and came to my city from another one. We hang out occasionally, so I went to see her. We spent the day together. It was really nice like usual. We both are stoners, so we also smoked some weed. The encounter started when we were waiting for her bus to come so she could go to her mother's house. We were smoking cigarettes when another bus arrived and left. A man came from the bus and walked up to us. He asked if we had a spare cigarette, and my friend gave him one. We thought he would leave, but no. He stayed and started talking to us. A little bit about me and my friend. We both were 17-year-old teenage girls at the time. As I said, we had smoked weed. He asked us things like how old we were, where do we live, where do we study, etc. My friend and I tried to answer in vague ways, saying something but not too much. He told us that he's 25 years old from Bangladesh and came to study in our Northern European country on a student visa. He told us where he's studying, which happened to be very close to my school as well as the same school where my older sister studies. My friend's bus came and she had to leave. We said our goodbyes and she left. I tried to tell the man that I had to go home, but he stopped me. He asked if he could get my number, which I tried to politely decline. He insisted, and I was high and already feeling weird about him. I decided to take his number and promised to text him later. After that, he asked if I wanted to go to McDonald's near us, but I declined as I didn't have any money. He offered to pay for me, but I again reminded him I had to leave. The man then finally left me alone. At the time, I had an 8 p.m. curfew, but it was about 7 p.m., so I didn't feel like leaving yet. I stayed close to my bus stop for a while when the same man came up to me and started talking to me yet again. He asked why I hadn't messaged him yet, and I told him that I hadn't had the time yet. He got very insistent on me messaging him right away so he would get my number, but I tried to tell him that I would when I got home. He didn't listen, and then he begged me to give him my number. At this moment, I really want to remind you of the situation. A 25-year-old man is trying to get a 17-year-old teenage girl to give him her number when she's all alone and under the influence. I started feeling bad, so I had messaged him on my phone, and when he got the message, my bus luckily arrived and I left. From then on, he had started messaging me daily, asking how I am, when we could see each other, asking about my life and things like that. At one point, I told him about how I was annoyed because my allowance was only $20 a week, which is not a lot these days. He asked me if I knew what an escort is. I was quite shocked because why would a grown man ask a teenager that? Still, I answered, and I told him that of course I know what it is. He offered me 50 euros to stay the night with his friend if I had sex with him. I told him no, I don't do that, and even if I did, not for 50 euros. He started begging me, saying his friend is also a student and doesn't have a lot of money to spare. I still told him no. After that, he suggested that he could be my pimp and find me customers, men that I can screw for money, and that for that he would get 50% off my services. As you can imagine, I was feeling really uncomfortable, so I just stopped answering. He continued messaging me at first daily, but it changed to a couple of times a week because I never answered. He would try to call, but I ignored those as well. After it had been over a month of this, I just blocked his number. I felt relieved and free. I sometimes would see him in the city center, but would just quickly turn around or hide so he wouldn't see me. I thought it was over, until I saw a message from an unknown number that had a Bangladesh area code. I right away knew it was him. He asked me why I blocked him, and again he was texting almost daily and calling started. I was really pissed off and decided to send a message. I told him he was a creep and disgusting. I told him to leave me alone and threatened to make a police report if he ever contacted me again, and I blocked him. After that, he left me alone and I was finally able to just continue on with my life. But if it was just that, I wouldn't have written this out for you all to hear. Yesterday, over 7 months after I sent him the last message, I saw him again. I'm currently living in a different part of the city than before. I also turned 18 recently, and I live on my own. I decided to go to my friends who live on the other side of the part of the city where we live. I walked to the store and picked up a couple of things for myself and the friend. After that, I walked to the bus stop. I had about 25 minutes until the next bus came, so I just stood there with my headphones on listening to none other than Southern Cannibal while smoking my cigarette. I'm a very paranoid person, so I pay attention to my surroundings. I had been waiting for about 5 minutes when I saw a car driving with the passenger window down very slowly towards me. The car stopped in front of me, and there he was, the man from Summer. He started talking to me like nothing had happened, asking how I am, do I remember him, where am I going, and finally why did I block him. I told him the truth, that his messages had made me really uncomfortable, and that I felt better blocking him than staying in contact. He apologized and asked if I needed a ride. I declined and told him I was waiting for my bus. Basically what happened was that he again and again ignored me, saying that I didn't need a ride. I probably told him that about 5 times in 2 minutes. He then asked if I could unblock him, and I told him that maybe when I'm at my destination. He again offered to give me a ride and to help me unblock him. I declined. He asked where my friend lived, and I just told him at the end of a random street. He asked for the address, but I told him that I don't remember the address. I only know how to get there from my memory. I started getting really uncomfortable and feeling anxious as he wasn't listening to me. Luckily, suddenly he just made me promise that I would unblock him when I'm at my friend's house, and I promised him I would after he left. The moment I couldn't see him anymore, I just broke down. I didn't even realize how scared I was until I was able to show it. I quickly sent my friend a message telling what happened, and she helped me calm down. In the end, I got to my friend's house safely without the creep following me. I also sent a message to the friend who was with me the day we met the creep, telling her what happened. What I've learned from this, and what all people should learn, is that no is a complete sentence. You don't owe an explanation to people that make you feel uncomfortable. You do not have to give anyone your number if you don't want to. Blocking is free and acceptable if you don't feel safe or comfortable. I learned a lesson from this. I was wondering if I should just unblock him for a moment to tell him to leave me alone and keep driving if he ever sees me, and then just block him again, but my friend told me not to. If any of you have a similar experience like this, please just stop it before it gets out of hand. It's okay to tell someone no. This was back in 2014. I was a 20-year-old community college student living with my parents in Southern California. I had a tight-knit group of stoner friends. There were 5 of us, myself included. We're all still best friends today. Like all bored suburban kids, our days hanging out usually consisted of loitering in the parking lots, getting stoned, and going to parties when we could. We had a few smoke spots around town we would go to and get high at. Our main spot was a place we called the Sewer Lair. It was a giant storm tunnel at the end of the trail in this canyon area behind one of the local neighborhoods. It was secluded and we could be as loud as we wanted since there were no houses nearby. The tunnel was maybe 20 feet in diameter. A small stream of water ran down the center of it. There was this offshoot directly to the right just past the entrance that led to another smaller tunnel system. This is where we would hang out. We would come here almost every night, so one night we were at the Sewer Lair. It was maybe around 1 a.m. We would usually hang out pretty late and wait for our parents to go to sleep so we don't come home and have to see them smelling like weed and cigarettes. Me and the boys were smoking, talking, and listening to music. The usual. Except this night, water was draining from one of the tunnel systems further down. It was pretty loud. It sounded like a small waterfall. We don't get much rain in California, so it made sense that this would only happen once in a while. A few hours in, one of the guys kept looking over at the main tunnel. Says he thinks he's hearing voices. We tell him it's just the music and our voices echoing, but we turned off the music and listened silently to prove that he's just stoned and being paranoid. We listened closely, and we could hear these faint voices. It was difficult to hear because of the waterfall, but it sounded like a group of people chanting. We froze and traded glances. We sat in silence and listened for a few minutes. One of the bros finally snapped and insisted we go check it out. A few of the bros were scared and didn't want to do it. But after some bickering, we decided to go see what was happening. There were 5 of us. What could go wrong? So we used the flashlights on our phones and make our way down the main tunnel. We walked for about 15 minutes and the chanting got louder but still sounded very far away. We still couldn't make out what they were saying because the waterfall was so loud, but it was definitely a group of people speaking in unison. We walked for a little while longer. At this point, we made it so far that there wasn't even graffiti on the walls or trash on the ground anymore. As we continued walking, we noticed that the tunnel was getting warmer. It was always really cold here, so it was strange that the temperature was gradually rising the further we went. We kept moving. The chanting was getting loud, so we knew we were close. It was loud enough to realize that the chanting was in a different language and that it had to be at least 4 or 5 people. We kept moving and noticed the graffiti on the wall started to show up again. It was different than before though. It was all just very eerie. I immediately brushed it off as just edgy kids trying to scare people. But the further we walked, the more unsettling the markings on the wall became. It was a lot of weird occult type crap. There were melted black candles scattered on the ground with these weird trinkets around them. The trinkets looked handmade and were made of animal bones, string, and cloth. We were all quietly inspecting the area when one of the guys pointed down the tunnel and told us to cut the lights. We turned off our flashlights and looked. We could see a faint flickering orange light far down the tunnel. It was barely visible because it was so far, but we could tell that the light was coming from either candles or torches by the way it was flickering. It wasn't a direct light either, so it had to be coming from one of the offshoots in the tunnel. Our phones were all low on battery, so we started speed walking toward the orange light. The chanting continued. Then out of nowhere, a blood-curdling scream bellowed from the tunnel up ahead. We all froze and put our lights down. It was the most horrifying scream I've ever heard in my life. I couldn't even tell if it was a human or an animal. The chanting continued. Then another horrifying scream echoed down the tunnel. The guys were all ready to get the hell out of there, but I insisted that we checked it out. I led the way as we slowly walked toward the light. The chanting and screaming just continued. We made it about 30 feet from the offshoot that the light and voices were coming from. The tunnel was very hot at this point, and it smelled awful. The air was thick and it was difficult to breathe. We were sweating, and it felt like we were suffocating. We inched our way toward the offshoot as the chanting continued, flinching every time there was another awful scream. The screams had become increasingly more violent and non-human sounding. We were all lined up with our backs against the wall of the main tunnel in front of the offshoot. The chanting and screams were coming from right around the corner. The boys gestured at me to take a peek. I took some deep breaths. My heart was pounding. I quickly peeked in for a second and then pulled back. This offshoot was exactly like the one at the entrance we would hang out at. At the center was a naked man on his knees and his hands on the ground and his back to me. He was covered in dirt and sweat. He was in front of what looked like some kind of handcrafted altar. The walls were covered in writing. The whole area had crowds of black candles lining the walls, and they were all lit. There had to be at least 50 or 60 of them. The man was also sitting at the center of some kind of candle formation. My face went numb. I looked at the guys and couldn't even speak. The chanting and screams continued as I just gave them a blank stare. I couldn't comprehend what was happening. The chanting and screaming sounded like it had to be a total of at least 5 people, but there was only one guy in there. I decided to take another peek mid-chant. This time my whole body went numb. All of the chanting and screaming was just coming from this one man. It was like he had 5 voices at once. I gestured to one of the bros next to me to take a look. He stepped forward and his foot brushed against the ground, making a loud scraping sound that echoed. We all froze. Then the chanting just completely stopped. My heart dropped into my stomach. It was dead silence. We all looked at each other. Then out of nowhere, we made a sprint for the entrance all at once. None of us even said a word. We just ran as fast as we could. It felt like we were running forever. We all hauled ass for about 10 minutes before finally getting out of the storm tunnel. We just stood in the field in front of the sewer lair and caught our breaths. A couple of the guys were throwing up from the sprint. After we caught our breaths, I told them everything I saw. They were all just speechless, trying to comprehend what had just happened. We started hearing screams from the tunnel. This time they were long and drawn out, almost like a howling wolf. We ran up the trail in the neighborhood and then got the hell out of there. We vowed to never come back again. This was 6 years ago, and it still haunts me and my bros to this day. I have no explanation for what happened. I don't know very much about Satanism/occult type crap, but if anyone does, feel free to give me your thoughts on what you think was happening that night. I would really appreciate it. Thanks for listening. I hope everyone had a good Labor Day weekend. I'm a 24-year-old female, and I decided to spend my day fly fishing on the river with some of my friends. What started as a pretty common day of fishing ended up being a very uncomfortable one. My friends and I hit the river a little bit before noon. We have a specific spot that we usually go to that isn't frequented very often, but due to the weekend, they did have more people than normal. Not as much in comparison to other areas, but still more than usual. There were 4 of us in total, but we scattered around the riverbank. For the most part, I had eyes on everyone though. Right next to where I had my stuff set up, a gentleman decided to lay his stuff down and even set up a folding chair near mine. I was fishing, so I didn't really care. But after I caught one, I put it on ice, and that's when this guy initiated conversation. He introduced himself and I gave him my name, but didn't offer much more. He started making small talk, which I'm not really a fan of. I never know what to say. I grabbed a beer from one of our ice chests and he asked if he could bum one. I feel that was a bit of a rude question, but I gave him one as a good gesture because it was a holiday weekend. We always usually end up making friends with somebody, and offering a beer or two is usually one of our customs as a group. So this wasn't extremely off, but people do generally wait until we offer is the point that I'm getting at. I got back in the river and cast out my line. He stood about 5 feet away from me and just kept talking. I listened to him. Not that I had much choice though. but gradually it started moving away from him. He kept following me, which is a big no-go for me. He started making some very inappropriate comments and asked some very inappropriate questions. Some are as follows.
Do you have a boyfriend?
I'll probably be lesbian after this.
Are you wearing a push-up bra?
No, I'm wearing waders. So how the hell can you possibly get that inaccurate information?
When was the last time you did the dirty?
Well, probably more recently than you did, I thought to myself.
What's the biggest you've ever had?
In this river, about a 10-pound largemouth. Duh, I know what you mean, and I'm not biting.
You want to go and have some fun?
No, I was having plenty of fun before he showed up. I got tired of the questions and him not taking the hint, so I moved downstream where one of my guy friends was. I told him the guy was bugging me and I needed to find a new spot. My friend started waddling out of the river to go talk to him, but he had moved away by that time. With the guy gone, we were able to continue fishing in peace now. After a couple more hours on the river, we collected our belongings and headed back to the parking lot of the fly shop we're parked at. Moving all of our gear back and forth took about an hour by itself, and in that time, I noticed that the creep was still around. I told my friend about him again, but I stopped him and my other friend was going over to him. Didn't seem worth the trouble. Plus, the guy stood at about 6'4" to 6'5" based on my observations, and I just didn't want anyone getting hurt on my behalf. After about another hour, we all parted ways for the time being, but we were going to meet up later to cook our catch. I went into the fly shop to grab a Coke, which left me as the only remaining one from our group. This is where the story gets scarier in my opinion. I was at my truck and removed my waders and then threw them in the back. Then I grabbed a t-shirt from my bag to change into. Lo and behold, look who walks up. Here my dumbass is alone in the parking lot and not close enough to the shop to go for help. And then this creep then says,
"Fire titties you got there."
And he refers to my shorts as coochie cutters. He was getting dangerously close to me, so I told him to get away. When he continued, I officially felt threatened. Thankfully, your girl packs heat, and I grabbed my pistol from my truck and gave him 45 reasons that he would be making a mistake. He immediately turned around and said he was joking. He then proceeded to speed walk back towards the tree line. So yeah, there I was, boots, shorts, and a sports bra, pointing a 45 at the ground and threatening a creep. Wouldn't my dad be proud of his daughter? I drove away feeling surprisingly normal, but pulled over at one point and started crying. I hate crying. It's such a girl thing to do. Kidding, of course. I pulled into a gas station on my way home when I saw a wildlife and fisheries agent, where I explained the encounter and filed a report. He told me that he would contact the sheriff's office, who did reach back out to me this morning, where I filed a separate report. Unfortunately, I know how police reports go, and I know this guy won't even be investigated. But I do think I dodged a bullet, and so did he. From now on, I'll be sure to keep company with me until I'm ready to leave. A few nights ago, I woke up to start my day. I wander out to the living room and I see that the front door is unlocked. I love my fiance, but he can be a bit forgetful. I lock the door and head into the kitchen to start a pot of coffee and make myself something to eat. My night continues uneventfully. A few hours later, it's 1:30 a.m. I'm in my office, the farthest room from the front door. My door is closed, my headphones are on, and I'm streaming a video game on Twitch with friends. I'm oblivious to the world. Suddenly, my office door opens up and my fiance has a really confused look on his face. He asks if I've heard knocking. I responded no, and I'm unsure how he could hear any knocking as our bedroom door is basically surrounded by other rooms. I ask if he wants to go check, and he seems befuddled. I grab my phone and start looking through our security camera, and I see that there is indeed a person recognized on our camera. That being said, we live on the edge of town with very little foot traffic, and this appears to be a woman without a vehicle walking up our very snowy driveway. And I mean like feet of snow, by far one of the worst driveways to walk up in our neighborhood. My fiance and I approach the door, and our exchange goes as follows. "Hello?" An older woman then replies, Hi, is this Jennifer? I'm sorry, ma'am, Jennifer doesn't live here. No, this is Jennifer Street, right? Oh, yeah, this is Jennifer Street. Do you need assistance? Should I call the police for you? She responds, only if you think you need to. I'm just kind of lost. Do you know of someone with a primer gray truck that lives on this street? At this point, I'm kind of just like, it's a bit of a dirtbag street on the end of town. There's probably a few primer gray vehicles here. I begin to direct her towards the more clandestine end of the street, at which point she asks if she can get a glass of water. My fiance, who had been completely silent up until this point, then responded firmly, No, I'm sorry, ma'am. At which point I excused myself because I needed to use the restroom. I have a nervous bladder. It can't be helped. I opened the bathroom door and he tells me that he asked her to leave and she sounded like she was sobbing before she left. I asked him if he wanted me to call the police dispatch and he said that he already did. I let the woman on dispatch know all of the details I knew, including the clothing she had on, and she let me know that they would get right on it. A little while later, I had checked the security camera and I saw that the police had come down the street the opposite way she needed to go, meaning that she hadn't been seen by them. I felt terribly guilty about not giving her a glass of water, but that late at night seemed suspect. I really hoped she got to where she was going. The poor thing seemed like a bit of a lost soul that could use some help, but I also have a tendency to be really naive. Hey everyone, hope you all enjoyed today's stories. Consider stopping by on my Kick streams sometimes. Now that I've officially face revealed, I'm streaming multiple times a week on Kick. And yeah, it'd be pretty cool to have you there. It's a pretty fun time, so consider stopping by. Anyways, hope you all have a good day. And remember to always stay